European Union, International Labour Organization. As usual, such a phenomenon is developing such a scope, it becomes an interest for research. And in that case, researchers have asked themselves, how do such international organizations come about, and how do the member states stick together? And they came up with an answer, a theory, according to which an international organization is something like the Society of States, quite similar actually to human society, about individual states in that case, sharing common values and of interest and aware of that, that decide to be bound by common rules and to establish common institutions. We know that the contract theory is much less abstract than in relation to human societies, but some of these societies are more or less integrative, they are more or less commoditized. If you take the UN, you have common rules, but not really enforcement mechanisms. You may have common values, but it's only a minimal common denominator. And if you take the other end of the spectrum, the most integrative society, you will find the European Union with really complex and effective, I would say, enforcement mechanisms for the common rules, with a set of values and principles it assumes to be standing for. So the EU is more integrated in the sense that it's more bent on making all its elements the constituent part of the whole. It means that these elements, the states, they have to fit the whole. So there is an element of similarity that is inherent to this conception of state society, and it also means that if you want to integrate as a state that already exists in society, you have to adapt a little bit. You have to transform and to fit into this model of what is expected. Why is this interesting for Georgia today? Well, Georgia maybe or maybe not aiming at becoming integrated in the European Union, either by membership or by having a partnership with the European Union. And in both cases, the EU has to prove that it is to some extent at least similar to other EU member states, and that it shares common values, and that it wants that the EU and Georgia have common interests. If you listen to the former enlargement commissioner of the European Union, Commissioner Füle, he stated a few months ago, I believe it was in June, that the Eastern Partnership, extended also to Georgia, is about, on the one hand, integratedness or inclusiveness, depending on the translation you get, and differentiation. But if you want to become a member of a society, such an integrative society as the EU, you would assume that a high degree of similarity is needed. So is there really room for differentiation in the future EU-Georgia relations? And that's what I would like to analyze today. But first, which form is going to take the future of EU and Georgia relations? Nobody knows. The EU itself doesn't know it. Maybe it's going to be a membership, who knows? But the EU has different approaches to each of the former states that have become members of the European Union. So if the procedure to become a member is always different, you cannot say that because Georgia is being treated differently than, let's say, Austria, it doesn't mean that it's not going to become a member state. And yet, Georgia is part of the European neighborhood policy. And for many people, the neighborhood policy is actually not the path toward membership, but an alternative to membership. It allows states to become quite involved with the EU, to become really close, but they are not supposed to become members. And over the last years, or even the last decades, the EU has kept sending mixed signals, I would say, to Georgia and to the international community about its intentions. It has been criticized for this by high-ranking EU officials like Commissioner Füle, also by Georgian officials, and also by Georgian and European populations. But can Georgia become a member at all? The first condition would be that Georgia is an European state. According to who you listen within the Georgian population, you may get a positive or a negative answer. And if you look at the preamble to the DCFTA, the Deep and Comprehensive Agreement that has been signed this year, you will see that in the preamble, Georgia is depicted as an Eastern European state. So what does it mean? Does it mean that Georgia is a European state? But why add Eastern? Or it doesn't mean that an an Eastern European state is a little bit less European than a true European state. But this is a subjective criteria, I would say, and the answer to this question depends on many debates, and we don't have the time for that now. The second step is that Georgia must prove its commitment to democracy, human rights, the rule of law. You have this commitment at least on the paper in Georgia, in the constitution. Georgia has on the paper truly liberal and democratic constitution. It's also proved by Georgia's membership in the Council of Europe, but you are many members in the Council of Europe with different levels of commitment, I would say, to these values. Georgia also has to prove that it shares some interest in membership with the European Union. But does the EU have an interest in extending its membership circle to Georgia? Well, if you listen, Georgia has an interest in membership. It's supposed to bring first political stability, protection maybe against Russia, military protection. The European Union is also to some extent a military union. It's supposed to bring economic and social welfare. But what does the EU gain from a membership? Well, the EU is interested in stability in the region because first, a war on the eastern border of Europe is really not interesting for the EU. It also means that it's keeping Russia at bay. It also means that the future energy supply of the European Union is secure, and in the long run, it also means that the single market of the European Union is going to be to get bigger, so more consumers and more producers. It's going to mean enhanced competition. So it would seem that membership could be actually a win-win deal. So there are some shared interests in membership. But the sine qua non condition to either membership in the European Union or partnership with the European Union is that Georgia proves that it does embrace the interests and values that have brought the current member states of the European Union together. It also has to prove that to some point it's similar to those member states. So, in concrete terms, what does it mean? It means that Georgia has to approximate EU standards, both standards that have been set in terms of legal norms and standards that are more political, that have been set in terms of values. However, maybe the task is a little bit easier than that, because often the values of the European Union have been translated into legislation, into legal norms. The European Union had started as an economic community, even though it was pursuing a more noble goal to keep peace in Europe. It's a more noble goal, but it's not abstract, it's a pragmatic goal. And yet, it's not enough for Georgia to undergo an economic transformation in order to come closer to the EU, because economics are never just about economics. If you take one example, to high levels of productivity, you need a high-skilled workforce. How do you get that? By education. And so it means that the EU is, at some point, involved in education. It has only the competence to support and coordinate the actions and the efforts of in the member states in the area of education. And what has produced the Erasmus program. Many people here are involved in education in Georgia. The Erasmus program has been extended to Georgia. And it was hard enough for Georgia universities to meet the criteria to participate in the Erasmus program, even though the EU was not supposed to set norms with the Erasmus program. And this was already hard enough to do. So you see that slowly the European Union or the European Community a few years ago has slowly pervaded or even invaded all aspects and all fields of human life. It was something that has been foreseen by the founders of the European Union and was even wanted by them. Jean Monnet has elaborated a theory of European integration by spillovers. But this means that today the process of approximation for Georgia will mean that it will be touched not only on economic aspects, but also on political aspects, and even on cultural aspects. The question is, why would Georgia actually undergo such a reform process? Well, what state? The state is many things, but for our purposes, it's made of population. So why would the Georgian people be willing to work so hard to get a little bit more like the EU in order to get maybe membership or maybe partnership? Well, because either membership or partnership are something Work Party. But if you listen to the Georgian population, we notice a certain kind of fatigue, a certain weariness of making efforts, and the impression that they are getting nothing, or not understanding why what they are going to get is actually will benefit. So maybe the European institutions, the Georgian government is involved into more advertisement campaigns for the European Union, more explanation if they want to have more support. And the other part is the population is sometimes in certain states, maybe all states at some point separated from the people. And so integration and approximation process also depends on the willingness of the state official. And in that case, we have had President Saakashvili, the president that many times said again and again that they were committed to the European Union, that they saw the future of Georgia not only with the European Union, but even in the European Union as a member state. And actually, the European Union is using either partnership or membership as a reward for reforms that have been conducted. It's not the first time in history that the trade policy is used to foster some goals that have no real links to a trade policy, for instance, human rights policy. But in what is being offered right now with the ratification of the association of the DCFTA agreement, it's a big reward, a free trade zone. And for such a reward, many reforms were needed and are still needed. Some reforms are in the countries, in Georgia's own interest, and some are also made in order to produce the producers and the consumers in the other member states, in the European Union. If we take an example of that, is the reform of intellectual property law in Georgia, because producers or designers in the European Union don't want to have all the ideas stolen unless it's for protection in Georgia. But the European Union has a tool that is even more powerful if it wants to motivate third states, such as Georgia, to conduct reforms. It's membership. Membership is both the reward for reforms, as it has been used, for instance, for the 10 Eastern European states that joined the EU in 2005, and also used to foster, once a state is already a member, further reforms. And this has been the case for Greece, Spain, and Portugal, the three states that were coming right out of dictatorship, and they jumped into the arms of the European Union and became truly democratic states only after joining the European Union. But the EU is not sure where it wants to go with Georgia, so maybe it's going to test Georgia's own commitment, first to see whether Georgia is really committed to the EU, and second to try to win time to make a decision. Maybe it's illegal actually for the EU to want to test Georgia, because some other candidate states made only temporary changes in order to satisfy EU assessments. But in the case of Georgia, Georgia has been striving for reform for over 20 years. So the odds of seeing Georgia right now reverting back to its old ways are really, really low. The other hand, in some states like Greece, made only superficial changes or even gave misleading indications. But Georgia has been complimented upon its transparency in its collaboration with the European Union and other institutions, even during the most painful moment when the EU was investigating the war of 2008. And even that, Georgian officials were really open and willing to collaborate with the European Union. So, if we go back to our initial question, how far Georgia has actually to go into the approximation process? First, approximation doesn't mean that it's what the goal is to achieve similarity, perfect similarity or uniformity. If we take one example, the Council of Europe, when it implemented the European Convention on Human Rights, which the European Union is going to ratify also, it aims at approximating all its member states to common standards in the field of human rights, but it uses a functional approach. It means that what the Council of Europe and the European Union are looking at, it's not the means employed to reach a certain goal, it's the goal itself. If you want an example when it comes to the EU prohibits all discrimination on religious grounds. But it doesn't mean that the EU is going to criticize one of its member states because of the form of the relations between the state and the church, which means that the Article 9 of the Georgian Constitution, relating to state and church relations in Georgia, is set. who are willing to take integration a step further, for instance, in the field of intellectual property, they are going to establish norms that are not only apply and applicable to those states that are participating. The Commission likes enhanced cooperation because it's taking integration forward. So maybe it's going to request of Georgia to adapt also itself to the norms set in this cooperation, even though it cannot request the same thing of an EU member state. Georgia cannot defend itself against such requests because the request is not a legal act, it cannot be contested. On the other hand, if Georgia says no, I'm not going to take over this particular legislation, it might put an end to the whole process of becoming closer to the EU. Yet, in general, EU mechanisms are really far from requiring uniformity, at least on the paper. You have regulation, you have two types of legal acts. You have the regulation, the states just have to apply them, they cannot do anything else. And you have directives, the states must just reach the goal set of the directive, but how they do that, it's up to them. But if you have a look at the period between 1998 and 2004, you have had more than 18,000 regulations and only 800 directives. So clearly, European institutions, the European Union, is more bent on integration than differentiation. Actually, the most important option for differentiation for states that are collaborating with the European Union is what I like to call contractual exceptions. The best example of that is the protocols added to the founding treaty with the Treaty of Lisbon for the UK, for Denmark, for Ireland, providing for exceptions for participating into Schengen, for participating into certain programs of the European Union. It also means that for Georgia, the best moment to assert its claim to a bit of differentiation is right now, because the contractual framework of the future relations between Georgia and the European Union is being reached right now, whether it's going to be a partnership, a membership, or anything in between. But the success in the negotiations of such differentiation options depends on the negotiation power of both Georgia and the European Union. And Georgia may be shy in negotiating with the European Union because it doesn't want to antagonize the EU, because it wants to get maybe its membership. And yet, what is a little bit unfair, if you want to put it like that, is that the EU is not being clear and even not being coherent about what it's going to offer to Georgia. It has been criticized for this. And actually, what it faces is not really an asymmetry of power or negotiating power, but an asymmetry of interest. EU officials assume that Georgia has more interest in joining the EU than is going to do anything to reach this goal, and the EU has interest in having Georgia joining. But Georgia also has something to offer or to propose to the European Union, and in the end, the partnership or the membership or whatever it's going to be will be as beneficial to Georgia as to the European Union. I have explained a little bit why before. Some high-ranking officials of the European Union or advisors and experts have realized this. So they are pushing the European Union to be at least more clear about the invitation, to say really we are aiming at membership, we are aiming at a new partnership, we are aiming at something else. And clarity is all more needed because the new commissioner, the enlargement commissioner, Commissioner Hahn, stated last week that the EU only delivers when the aspiring state delivers. It means that the EU is only going to keep its promises when the aspiring state, the candidate state of Georgia, is going to keep its promises. So it would also be fair that the EU be transparent about what it is we need to offer to deliver membership or partnership. And as a last word, I would say that many critiques can be addressed to the EU's behavior towards Georgia. For instance, the best tool to help the states approximate to EU standards while leaving some room for differentiation are the so-called trainings. You put an EU expert or civil servant being each Georgian, in that case civil servant, that's going to provide some advice, directions, or remarks. And it's about embedding EU practices and standards into already existing administrative practices in Georgia. And why has the European Union never proposed this to Georgia so far? Maybe because it's only done in candidate states. On the other hand, it has been done last year in the Ukraine. So why, and the Ukraine is definitely not an EU candidate state. So if the EU would grant this training to Georgia, it may be the